Talking Cougars is brought to you by Safeway. Come see what's fresh.
Welcome into Talkin Cougars Season 3, Episode 12. I'm former Washington State quarterback, joined by one of the GOATs, wide receiver Michael Bumpus. My God, Bump, we got big changes on the Palouse at the top of the athletic department. We'll get to that in a bit. Cougs are off a bye week, getting ready for Louisiana Tech, a 5-4 football team. Cougs trying to find a way to get back in the win column after a loss in Corvallis at Oregon State, a tough one. How do they bounce back from that? What do they need to do after this bye week to make it happen?
Man, well, second bye week, that's weird. Never had that happen before. I don't know. Well, in Canada, we had 2 bye weeks, so yeah, I feel it there. But, man, this is like self-reflect. You know, you lose to an Oregon State team who we felt was going to be tough going in, right? We knew that it was going to be tough playing these guys. And now you have a couple of weeks just to kind of digest it and right your wrongs and find some motivation. I think that's the main thing. These guys got to find something to motivate themselves. And these coaches got to find a way to put them in good position. So how do you bounce back? You just do, B. You know how this is. I mean, you got to lick your wounds and keep going. The schedule is still there. You still got to play a team. So you go through your grieving phases, right? We should have beat that team. What are we doing? Then you watch the film. Then you start to train. And then you get excited for football once again. So I'm hoping that they're back on the rise, man. But I think it's mental prep and just making sure you are assignment friendly coming up.
Bump, this reminds me so much of our senior year in 2007, right? It was a ton of ups and downs. Like we were trying to figure it out on defense. You know, we were pretty productive on offense, but we couldn't always put it together at the same time. And then we get to that back stretch of the season where we beat UCLA, and we had lost to Oregon, then we have a bye week, then we beat UCLA. And we've got, I think 3 games left, and we maybe got to win all 3 to get to bowl eligible, maybe win 2 out of 3. And it was like trying to figure out a way to make it happen. And there was a game against Stanford, right, where we really got up for that thing, and we went and got a win at home, you know? And we were kind of in it. And like, to your point about reflecting on coulda, shoulda, wouldas, that at times I think can kill a team. And you just have to focus on what's ahead. Washington State has so much to play for. I mean, 3 games to play, 3 winnable games, right? You're at 4 wins. 7 wins for this team in a bowl game would be unbelievable based on everything that went into this offseason. New coaching staff, all the player turnover. You know, Jake Dickert left really late in the process, threw off all your recruiting, whatever. All the things. If you end up at 7 wins, that's huge. If you end up at 6 wins, I still think it's a positive. So, you know, again, to your point, I hope the athletes are feeling that same sense of urgency, you know, that they had when they were playing Ole Miss or when they were playing Virginia, because there is a lot that matters. And like you said, though, the whistle's going to blow, right? And the ball's going to get kicked and you're going to play. The best thing about this bye week, in my opinion, is this team had a chance to get healthy. We heard Jimmy Rogers during the week talk about potentially getting back starting center Brock Dew. They might even get back starting right tackle Christian Hilborn, who's been out for weeks. And just having that continuity, if those guys do get back, is huge. You might get some defensive linemen back. And so the idea of getting healthy, even though you went into the bye week on a sour note with a loss to Oregon State, I think is the best thing that could have happened to this team.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's nothing like showing up for a game and you have all your dogs with you, you know, and 2s are 2s for a reason, 3s are 3s for a reason. They're young, they're developing. There's a big gap between your starters and your backups at this level. So when you go into a game knowing you got all your guys with you, that can change some things dramatically, just mentally. For me, it's a lot of mental game going on right now. Like you mentioned the ups and downs, right? You almost beat Ole Miss. You almost beat Virginia. You got blown out by North Texas. Like this team has experienced so much. You lost to a team at Oregon State who you were 1 field goal away from sending it into overtime. So I think this team has to be mature mentally, and getting some guys back can definitely help with that.
There's no doubt. And, you know, we usually do MVPs following a game and talk about kind of what they did in that game. I'd like to look ahead, Bump, and these next 3 games on offense and defense, who needs to be the MVPs on each side of the ball if this team's going to come out with 2, maybe 3 wins? Who do you like on offense as your MVP?
I think I'm going to pull something you did a week ago or a couple weeks ago. I'm going to look at a group. The offensive line has to be the MVP on offense. You have to. When Zevi has time, he's accurate. When he has time, he can get the ball to the receivers. Now, Xavier has to make good decisions too, but he's shown that when he has a nice pocket, he can make some things happen. When you're getting to the second level in your run game, your running backs have shown that they can do it. I think it all comes back to what football is all about, the trenches. Man, I'm looking at this offensive line. You mentioned some guys getting healthy. That should rejuvenate them. You've thrown some young guys in there and had to kind of learn on the job, which can be tough at times, and we've seen that. But I'm looking at the offensive line, man. The core of any offense, yes, us skill guys get the love and the glory and all that good stuff, but we all know if your bigs ain't getting it done, it's going to be a tough day. Who you got?
No doubt about that. And whether it's the starters or the backups or the young guys, they got to find a way to make it happen. That was a huge issue against Oregon State, was the changes on the offensive line. I think the lack of continuity and the youth, obviously led to some sacks and just threw off the rhythm of the offense. I'm going to pick actually two guys that are going to be close to your heart, and that is two wide receivers, Bump. That's leading receiver Josh Meredith and second leading receiver Tony Freeman. Those two guys, to me, have been the best offensive players for Washington State consistently throughout the season. Obviously, Xavier Eckhouse has done some really nice things at times. We've had kind of bursts of the running backs. But Josh Meredith and Tony Freeman are single-handedly the two biggest playmakers on this team, and they were non-existent at Oregon State, not, in my opinion, because of anything they did. I think they need to be more of a focus of this offense. And that plays into your conversation about offensive line because, look, if you've got changes on the offensive line, it's just going to be hard to run the football. That's the reality, right? You find success offensively by getting the ball, in situations like this, by getting the ball in the quarterback's hands quickly to your best playmakers and let them do their thing. That's what I used to do with number 5 in the slot, is find that man and throw you the rock so you could make the plays. Because I knew that ball needed to come out of my hand fast. So whether it was you or Brandon Gibson or whatever it was, I wanted to spread the field sideline to sideline in the quick passing game. That's what I think Washington State needs to do. If those two guys are productive the last 3 games of the season, I bet you Washington State's scoring a lot of points. Because you know what that also means, Bump? It means Xavier Eckhouse isn't having to drop back and pass that much. He's throwing the screen game. He's throwing the quick passing game. He's taking what the defense gives him. So I'm looking at Josh Meredith and Tony Freeman to be the MVPs, not necessarily for things that they have to do, but they just need to be the focus of this offense over the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, I agree with you. You said something that stuck out to me. Against Oregon State, there was a lot of dropbacks, right? And I think that when you have some struggles on the offensive line, go to your quick game. Get the ball at the quarterback's hands quickly. Let the playmakers be exactly that. I'm going to let you start off on the other side, man. Defensively, who needs to be the guy or the guys out there?
Man, it's hard to kind of pick a guy because, look, Bump, honestly, the defensive group has been fantastic. In the last 5 games, they've given up an average of 13.6 points per game. Like, they've played great, and they've improved immensely throughout the season with injuries on the defensive line and all these things. That's been the bright spot of this team. But that being said, if I need to pick somebody to show up and really make it happen, I want to see Tucker Large continue to be that dude, right? He seems to be the spark plug, right? He seems to get it going. Him and Caleb Francel, I got to give Francel some flowers too at that nickel spot. But when Tucker Large is making tackles in the secondary, or excuse me, at the line of scrimmage, when he's making tackles out in space, and a couple times we've seen him kind of get his hands on the football in the pass game, whether it's bat downs or an interception or two that have gotten called back. I think if Large has some big games and makes some big plays, that's going to really show up in a way that means that defense is continuing its good play.
Well, you know what? Just like you and I had a connection on the field, we got a connection here because I was going Francel all day. I was going Francel.
Yeah.
I'm like, look, we've had conversations about how those two kind of feed off each other, right? If one is setting the edge, one is filling the gap. And there's some violent players out there. And I love Francel's game because he's a bit undersized, but he does not play like that at all, man. I think that the energy that these two bring really set the tone for this defense. I'll throw McKenna in there as well. But my guy is Francel for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. And you probably get Bobby Terrell. He was back 2 weeks ago against Oregon State, has a bye week to rest up again. He's been huge. And maybe Ray Stevenson, defensive end. If you get 2 good defensive ends going, that back end looks way better. When we come back, we're going to be joined by another all-time great, quarterback Ryan Leaf on Talkin' Cougs. This segment is presented by Cougs First. Think Cougs First for products, services, and hiring. All right, back here on Talking Cougars, we're fired up to be joined by a good friend of ours, all-time great Cougar QB, now just rocking the world of broadcast. We get to see him almost weekly, it feels like. Ryan Leaf, it is so good to have you, Ryan. Thanks for joining us, man.
Hey, my pleasure, buddy. Good to see you. Glad to be a part of it.
Yeah, man, I really appreciate it. You have unique perspective, I think, from a lot of different lenses. You get to see college football and the NFL at a obviously a really a really high level. But then, you as a part of the Coug family and your experience with the university and your connection to the university, we've had to really ride this wave, right, for the last 3 or 4 years for sure. And I'm interested kind of your high-level take on Washington State football, the program under Jimmy Rogers, and some of the new leadership, right, from the president on down through Ann McCoy at Washington State.
Well, I've kind of taken it from the perspective of, it is what it is. I haven't allowed like little things to be incredibly upsetting. I understand the big picture in all of this, and so I was just of the mindset when realignment happened, that I'm a Cougar, and so I would watch regardless of where it's being broadcast, who they're playing, where they're playing. It didn't matter. I'm a Coug, period. That's the best decision I ever made in my life, what I chose to be when I was 18. And so that was the mindset I took. And then when Teresa Gould took over the Pac-12, and I like to remind people this all the time because people talk about even leading up to the formation of the new Pac-12 last year, that if, let's say, the ACC or somebody would have come calling to Washington State or Oregon State, in which there may have been, I believe dearly that neither one of those institutions were going to leave. Teresa had promised them that this Pac-12 brand was going to be meaningful. And listen, when I heard the plan and the teams that were going to be involved and the opportunity for Washington State, they were going to have a better opportunity at the college football playoff than they ever did in the original Pac-12 each and every year. And that was impressive for me. And for the first couple of years, I think it could be incredibly beneficial for them to have a better chance than I think of Washington or maybe even USC or any of those teams that bolted, UCLA for sure, to ever get in the college football playoff, So that was meaningful to me. And then the decision to bring Jimmy Rogers in, of course, was done with some diligent work by Ann McCoy. She was sweet enough to reach out to me and ask my opinion on the matter. I thought that the best possible coach would be a coach that had some head coaching experience in the past, who had built the program, and Jimmy had built an incredible one there, taking over at South Dakota State. Winning was really at the top of it, and I knew that this was going to be difficult, and you had to have somebody with some fortitude to accomplish that. And I think he has. There's been plenty of ups and downs. The quarterback position has been the main piece to the puzzle, I think, and getting wins this year, and now they're in a position with 3 games to go, to kind of control their own destiny here and get to a bowl, to be bowl eligible. Home against Louisiana Tech, on the road against James Madison, and then at home for the rematch against Oregon State. So they still have a lot in front of them that they can accomplish this year. I appreciate him and his coaching staff and what they've done. I think the bigger, elephant in the room in all this is the simple fact that our contributors, our collectives, our fan base, our alumni, they haven't stepped up. And that's the biggest thing in all this. I do think Cougs are a special breed where you're out and about and you see one another, and it's love and it's character with one another, having gone to Washington State, being in something together. I just don't know if, they necessarily, put their money where their mouth is. And we've seen that through the NIL aspect of things. We have just not set the standard for that.
I think you're dead right. You talk about Coug fans being a special breed, where this, you laid it out perfectly, right? From the top down, Teresa Gould has this vision for what the Pac-12 is going to be, and the member schools, the member institutions, their opportunity in the college football playoff, at least when it comes to football, right?
Yep.
Like that's, there's no doubt there's a very clear path, to the CFP for, these top teams that emerge from the new Pac-12, and, then on down through Jimmy Rogers and what he's done in year one and could do, but how, and like, what is the message and kind of the why for Coug fans to jump on board, right? Because I agree with you. Like I have no doubt that Coug fans want to see success on the field and in Giesa Field and come back to Pullman and see these teams of of national prominence, like when you were playing and Mike Leach and that sort of thing. And I just can't. I'm trying to put my thumb on what that message is to make it happen.
Well, sometimes I think, a mirror has to be held up, and for whatever it's worth, I think this fan base, or at least the people that can contribute, live, entirely in the moment a lot of the time. And if it's not going well, sometimes they're fair weathered fans when it comes to the fandom of it. I remember after that Idaho game, I was very, critical of the fan base and how they were, immediately jumping on the idea of what Jimmy Rogers was bringing to the table and the players and everything like that. And I just breathe a little bit, let something play out here. The biggest thing here is the collective and the NIL money, where we're at right now. And it's nowhere near where we need to be. And it's not going to be able to be commensurate to compete in this new conference. And I think that's a very important piece to all this. So I love what Jack Thompson and the 1890 collective were doing. It's something that I signed up for, $18.90 a month. Like that's a Netflix subscription or whatever the heck it costs now these days. I think it's a great model. And with the amount of alumni we have out there, anywhere from 225 to 250,000 alumni, that's a reasonable thing to ask. And if everybody signs up and does something like that presents a tremendous amount of NIL influence for this university. It allows us to compete. It allows us to go get some certain players at certain positions. That's very important for this program to compete. So that's an important piece in this. And like I said, I think Cougar fans sometimes they live in the moment. And if it's not going well, they kind of throw in the towel. And it's not a pointed criticism. It's just a mirror. There are many times where people had to show me the mirror and I didn't like what I was seeing, but it helped me go further than I thought I could probably go. And so that's where we're at right now. We're not commensurate to what the other teams coming into this new league next year are doing around contributing to this program. And I think the new leadership in place has showcased that it'd be worthwhile. And I love the fact that not only is our university run by women entirely, but also the commissioner is as well. I think, as my wife put it, there needed to be some women in charge to get this thing settled and done right.
Yeah, and we saw, to that point, right? We saw President Cantwell this week come out, and say very specifically that, Washington State has to be funded better through NIL to compete in the new Pac-12. And I think that alignment, right, of university leadership, athletic department leadership, league leadership, the whole thing, really could benefit Washington State if everybody can continue to move it forward, like you said, with Jimmy Rogers. And I'm excited. When we come back, we'll take a look at Jimmy Rogers season 1 and this game against Louisiana Tech. This segment is brought to you by Flat Stick Pub, local craft beer, mini golf, and old school fun. Back here on Talkin' Cougars, joined by Ryan Leaf. We spent that first segment talking about some of the high level stuff. Ryan, like where this program's at in new Pac-12, what Coug fans can do through NIL. I'd like to dive a little deeper into year 1 of Jimmy Rogers and, kind of the rest of the season. But to date, where do you think, based on your expectations heading into the season, this program is at under Coach Rogers and this staff kind of following that second bye week?
I think they're in a really good spot. I would have loved to have seen them finish, a couple games that they had in their pockets. The Ole Miss game was the ripe for the taking. The Virginia one, of course. Those are 2 games that I think stick out, monumentally that they could have and should have won. The Oregon State game was just, I think, a lot of self-inflicted wounds that ultimately cost them. Um, for as good as Zevi has been this year in helping this team get back, I think, to center, sometimes, some of the chances he takes, some of the decisions he makes have been costly for this football team. Not saying that it would have been any better with anybody else behind center there. I think they struggle a little bit at that position, and they're trying to figure it out. Um, I like Jimmy. I had only met him once coming into the coaching search. I covered his national championship win against the University of Montana a couple years ago when I called that game, and he came across as somebody who was very focused and very intense, and I like that. That's the type of mindset I like. So excited for him. I text him, I try to text him once a week just to tell him he's doing a great job. Keep up. Um, I think any coach that comes in to Washington State is on loan to us, is what it is. It's rare that you have anybody that has some real ties to Washington State. So when a coach does leave, like when Jake Dickert did, I wasn't upset about it. I thought what he had done for us was great, and the position he put us in during that time where everybody was jumping ship, I was really appreciative. I thanked him, said good luck, and that's the same I feel about any other coach that comes in. I think they're going to put everything they can into trying to make this the best possible team they can. I think a win this year would be to get this team to bowl eligibility, and they have a shot. They have an opportunity to win 2 games out of the next 3 to get bowl eligible, and I think that would go a long way. It would give them extra practices, of course, that lead into that bowl game. It would give a value to the players who stayed, who fought, who got to play this year, and give themselves an opportunity to play in a bowl game. So I think I would measure it on whether or not they get bowl eligible or not. So 2 out of the next 3 games, that would do it, and I would look at this season as a total win in Jimmy Rogers' first year at the helm.
Yeah, I think that's super fair. And, you kind of allude to the 2 out of the next 3, and it starts this Saturday against Louisiana Tech coming to the Palouse. You're going to be on the call for the CW for that game. Just, give me your thoughts on, the game that you've, maybe kind of what you've seen to date, or, what a couple things to look for heading into this game for Washington State to get back on track after that tough loss down in Corvallis.
Yeah, it's a tough one to get through. You got a bye week to kind of get right, get healthy. I think that's one of the biggest things. Some of the injuries, they're not these, run of the mill soft tissue injuries. Like, these have been freak injuries, broken legs, ACLs, things like that have cost them some very good players. And so I think getting healthy is a big part of that. Louisiana Tech's a good football team. Shocked that they lost to Delaware last week. They dominated a Sam Houston team, 600 plus yards of total offense. And then, Sam Houston goes up and beats Oregon State. I was on that call Saturday and I couldn't believe it. And so by all things, it should make for a very entertaining, good football game. The thing I've been really impressed with Jimmy Rogers and this team has been the way they play defense. They just don't make a lot of mistakes. They're where they're supposed to be. They're in the right gap. They're in the right spots. They need to, for them to be scored on, it's like it is a long, arduous journey down the field to get in the end zone or get points. And that makes it a very difficult thing. The offense needs just to step up and be better, frankly, and score more points, because this defense is doing a heck of a job. They tackle and they rally to the football better than any Cougar defense that I've seen in a decade plus. They just run to the football. They're always around the football. I can't believe they've only gotten themselves the 1 interception this season. But they are around the football, and that tells a lot that your kids are willing to work that hard and run that fast and get to the football on defense. So I like their shots. La Tech's a long ways to come to Pullman. It's going to be a cold, late night game. This is perfect opportunity for this team to get back to 500 and then really lock in on a possible, nationally recognized football game a week from now, in November 22nd, when they head to JMU. Like, James Madison's in the top 25 this week. They are going to probably be in a position where They have a chance at the college football playoff as the highest ranked, conference champion outside of the Power Four. And if that's the case, that game's going to be huge. A big opportunity for Washington State on a national platform to show up and do something, ruin their season. And so, but it all starts with how you take care of business against Louisiana Tech, and excited for that one on Saturday night.
Yeah, and we get to see you for different reasons 3 weeks in a row. You got the call for Louisiana Tech and Oregon State at the end of the year, and then you're going to come out, take the family out to watch that JMU game, like you said, a big one out in Virginia. Well, Ryan, we thank you so much, man. Hearty go Cougs from all of us, Bump and I here, and appreciate you taking the time. We'll be back on Talkin' Cougars. This segment is brought to you by Valley GMC. See you in the Valley.
This is Talking Cougars. I'm Michael Bumpus with my quarterback, Alex Brink. The bye week is done. We have to look forward to our opponents. We got Louisiana Tech, man. And this is going to be a fun one. We need this game, B. We need this in a big way. Who are these guys on paper?
Man, it's an interesting matchup, Bump. This is a Louisiana Tech football team that's trying to find their way. They got 5 wins. They're 5-4, looking to become bowl eligible. Sonny Cumbie, the head coach, a guy that Coug fans maybe recognize the name, air raid disciple, played for Mike Leach at Texas Tech. But funny enough, they don't really run the air raid. Offensive coordinator, a little bit more in the kind of pro style, still spread, but not true air raid. Defensively, it's a team on paper that looks really good. Look, they're only giving up 18.9 points per game. That's number 19 in the country, Bump. And they forced a ton of turnovers, 7 turnovers. These guys are plus in the turnover margin, +6 for reference. Cougs are -10 in the turnover margin this year, which is horrendous. But Louisiana Tech seems to have some things going for them. But when you peel it back, you wonder kind of who this team is. They were solid to start the year, a 4-1 start with their only loss to LSU. But they've really struggled down the stretch here, going 1-3 against what is admittedly, Bump, better competition. They lost last week on a field goal to Delaware, but they've struggled in these last 4 games against some of that better competition. On defense, averaging 26 points per game given up in that stretch. So you kind of see where they start to find their challenges. Same thing, last 4 games, they've struggled mightily, only just over 200 yards passing. Their starting quarterback, Blake Baker, knocked out for the season with an ACL. So there's big time question marks for this team, both on offense, what they're going to do to the quarterback position, and then defensively, who are they against better competition? Now, we're trying to figure out who the Cougs are on offense after a 7-point performance against Oregon State. So that's going to be the matchup I'm looking for, is which team, right? Which version statistically on paper shows up. In my opinion, Washington State should show up and be the better football team, but they got to put it down on the field.
Yeah, now offensively, we're going to see a lot of shotgun, lots of shotgun. Now, the quarterback's going to be back there. We're going to see some RPO type stuff, some trips. They will run the football. They prefer some zone over like some gap scheme type of stuff. And it's weird watching this film because I've learned over the course of the season, you never underestimate your opponent. I've learned throughout the course of my football career, you never underestimate them. But this is the first game being a while to where I look at just the personnel, their offensive line versus our defensive line, their receivers against our DBs, their running back against our box. And I feel like the Cougs have the advantage here. You still got to go out there and play those games. You still got to go out there and compete and execute. But you know what? You're going to see trips. You're going to see 2x2. You're going to see some 11 personnel, some 10 personnel. But you're right, it's not a true spread. They do want to run the football, and they're better at running the football, frankly. About 120 yards, I believe, last game they had against Delaware. It's a really straight up, this is what we're running type of offense. I like the matchup this week with the Cougs.
Yeah, backup quarterback Evan Bullock, he last week just under 100 yards coming in, passing in relief of Baker. But he played a fair amount for Louisiana Tech in 2024. He played in 11 games and had over 300 attempts. So, he's not a guy that is going to feel like this moment's too big for him, may even feel like it's a great opportunity. That being said, Louisiana Tech 1-3 on the road this year, Bump. They're traveling a long way out to the Palouse. We saw what happened, right, to Toledo flying out to the West Coast. Louisiana Tech's flying a long way and going to some cold weather that they're not used to. So to me, there's a lot that stacks against this Bulldog team. That being said, Washington State cannot take them lightly. They got to come out and play their best football.
Yes, they do. Finally, somebody else making some long trips. Goodness gracious, we got lots of miles for our team. But let's go to the defense. Defensively, they're listed as a 4-3 defense. They will play some odd front as well. They have a DB in Jacob Fields. He has 2 interceptions. He stands out when you watch film. And again, I'm not overlooking anybody, B. I feel a lot better about this matchup than I did last week or a couple weeks ago against Oregon State. They're going to be a one-high team. They're not going to blitz a lot. They're going to try to set the edge. But I think that if we can get the run game going inside zone, this is going to set things up because I feel like our guards, our center, can handle the interior defensive linemen and get to these linebackers, man. I think this could be a good game as far as running the football. If you look at their stats, they're good against the run, but I'm looking at matchups. I think that's how we should start this game.
Yeah, a crazy stat that popped out at me. 7 turnovers for touchdowns this year, Bump. 5 pick sixes on the year. So clearly a team, no matter who it's against, that's going to go make plays and has a nose for the end zone on defense. You got to watch out for that. And a lot of that, to me, has to do with a defensive line and outside backers in that odd front that can create a pass rush even without blitzing. So that's going to put a shine spotlight, like you said, on that Cougar offensive line. Left tackle, Ashton Tripp. Right tackle, if it's Christian Hilborn or whoever's going to be out there playing that right tackle spot, those guys got to hold up to protect Zevi Eckhouse.
Yeah, it's you have to, and the thing here too, B, is like you have to start fast, right? You have to put a drive together, your first couple of drives. Defensively, you have to set the tone. You're gonna need the Coug fans to be out there loud and proud. This is a big moment because you mentioned 3 games left. You win a couple of these things, you are bowl eligible. So just come out fast. Let's get this thing going. All right, when we come back, man, we'll talk about what's going on at WSU. We got new leadership. We'll break that down next on Talkin' Cougars.
Back here on Talkin' Cougars, we're going to dive into some big news that happened on the Palouse this week. Athletic Director Ann McCoy is moving on from Washington State, and Bump, this is a big thing, right? For Washington State, they're trying to figure out where the leadership goes. You have new president Elizabeth Cantwell of the university. You obviously had Jimmy Rogers in football, and Ann McCoy had taken over when Pat Chun went to the University of Washington. McCoy was with the Cougs since 2001. We spent a ton of time with her when we were athletes in the athletic department. She is literally one of the nicest human beings I have ever been around. So kind, so caring. She is all that is good about college athletics, and truly wish Ann nothing but the best. My experience with her was fantastic every time.
Yeah, man, and she stepped up. I mean, Pat leaves and goes over to the west side, and you need immediate leadership. So why not go with someone who's been there for a couple of decades and understands exactly what it is to be a Coug and what the Palouse is all about? My experiences with her, man, I do some of these fundraisers for the Cougs, and she was passionate about the Cougs, passionate about NAL and trying to get these kids some dollars and keeping us in the fight. And my family used to go to the Coug games, and while I'm calling them next to you're in the other booth, and she let them go to their suite, just treated them so well, man. And I think that she's going to be missed. But because I don't know, or we don't know the ins and outs, right? We're not having these conversations with the new president and talking about what direction they want to go. It's hard to really pin down exactly why and what happened. But obviously, the university felt like there needed to be a change in leadership. So like we always do, we're going to support our Cougs, but we also definitely want to show love to Ann, man, one of the best people I know.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. We wish her the best. She's absolutely fantastic. And you kind of alluded to the why and how and what, and it is hard to tell. But obviously, you got new leadership at the university with President Cantwell. She came out in the last week and very explicitly said that Washington State is going to be, in terms of NIL, the least funded program in the new Pac-12 bump. That's out of all of them. Texas State, Utah State, Boise. I mean, I've heard Fresno. I've heard numbers from a lot of these schools, and they are significantly more than what Washington State has kind of in that NIL fund through Cougar Collective, and then with the new House settlement through where Washington State's athletic department can give. So some of this has to be tied to the idea of galvanizing probably the fan base and alums and everybody around the idea that, Cougs just have to find a way to compete financially in this new landscape, or you're going to face often what we've felt the last few years, the John Mateers of the world leaving, the Cam Wards leaving, and maybe those aren't fair examples because they probably leave pretty much any program but the top 8 or 10. But it is more like guys like Carlos Hernandez leaving to go to Wake Forest, or Ansel Dimbu leaving D tackle to go to TCU, or Khalil Laufau going to Houston. I mean, these guys are guys that were meaningful young role players for Washington State last year that are no longer with Washington State because you couldn't provide a base level of compensation in this new landscape. And I know that sounds crazy to say, base level of compensation, but that's what it is, right? And so, think about what Ryan was saying on our interview with him, where, at some point we have to look ourselves in the mirror as a university, as a fan base, and as alums and say, something has to change, or things are going to stay the status quo. And nobody's happy with status quo. Nobody's happy losing to North Texas or losing to Oregon State. But there's a way to fix that. And it's through these channels that have been created through the collective and through the athletic department.
Yeah, it's you got to keep up. I mean, it's simple as that. And you're the OGs in this new Pac-12, yet you are the least funded. It's not a good look. So now, like, where do we go with leadership? What type of AD are we going to get? Someone who is familiar with this new landscape. I think that has to be important. Someone who is familiar with the area at the same time. There are so many boxes that you have to check. So I think this hire is going to be one of the most important hires in school history for a lot of the things that you just talked about and Ryan talked about. You have to keep up. If you do not change, if you don't find someone who is qualified for this position and who's an innovator, right, and who's a motivator and who can go out there and get people to reach in their pockets and help, the same things are going to happen. And, I think as Cougs, we're tired of just being like a stepping stone. Like for some universities, you're always going to lose guys to the next one and whatnot unless you're one of the blue bloods, right? But we should be able to retain a lot more of our talent. So I think this next hire is going to be huge.
Yeah, and for me, Bump, I look at this and sometimes I think, people from the outside looking in are like, man, it's got to be this big number, right? We have to move the needle so much, or maybe my dollars don't count. But the reality is the delta is not that wide, right? And there's plenty of great football players out there that if you can provide just enough, you're going to be successful. And Jimmy Rogers has said that. And Jimmy Rogers is a head coach that I think we all believe can go do this and evaluate talent properly. And so as you get this AD hire right with a great head football coach in place, I think Washington State is in a good place moving forward to compete in this new Pac-12. Speaking of Jimmy Rogers, when we come back, we'll hear from the head coach and some of the players as they head into the matchup versus Louisiana Tech.
This is Talking Cougars. I'm Michael Bumpus with Alex Brink. Let's hear some sound from coaches and players.
Well, excited for this week. Good to kind of get the guys away a little bit from the bye week, improve on some of the things that we felt like we needed to improve at, and then let the guys go and kind of clear their mind for what is a 3-game stretch here, 1 week at a time. So
the first bye week, we looked at some stuff that maybe we've gotten hit on and tried to address that. But honestly, if I'm being honest, the main focus for us older guys was just getting ready for this 3-game stretch and finishing strong.
I'll spend the bye week just getting better, attacking the little things, just getting better offensively, recovering, getting back where I'm feeling the best of myself. So that was really just the main thing.
we've shown that we can compete against anybody. We've shown that we can be consistent at certain things inside of games. And just because we try to correct one thing, it can't let the other thing then slip. Okay, it could be running the ball. We start to improve running the ball, we can't get worse at pass blocking, right? So this team has been resilient about how they've gone about their approach, because we don't really talk about the record ever. We try to just focus on what we can control, and we got a tough game versus Louisiana Tech. That's a really good football team that has a ton of weapons, a ton of speed on the perimeter. One of the best, receiving tight ends that we've probably faced this year. I know they may be banged up at quarterback, what it looks like. We'll see how that shakes on their end. But they're going to be explosive on offense, so we got to bring our A game And then defensively, I think they got a lot of team speed and are really physical. So we need to be confident going into this, and I'm excited for the preparation of this week to prepare for what is going to be a tough opponent.
All right, you heard it here. That was Jimmy Rogers and some of our players. When we come back, we're going to tell you how the Cougs beat Louisiana Tech. That's next here on Talking Cougs.
Back here on Talking Cougars, I'm former Washington State quarterback Alex Brink, joined by former Washington State wide receiver Michael Bumpus. Cougs are taking on Louisiana Tech this Saturday, anywhere from 7.5 to 8.5 point favorites against the Bulldogs. What do the Cougs have to do to win this game, Bump?
Man, so one of the greatest sprinters of all time, Usain Bolt, his start was so slow, but he had such long legs and finishing stride that, he would just run down whoever's in front of him. We are not that. We need to start fast. We need to get out the blocks. We need an early score. We need a big hit. We need something to get everybody excited about Cougar football once again, man. You can't let teams like Louisiana Tech gain confidence. Now, there are going to be some battles, right? There might be a turnover, might be a 3-and-out. That is just football. But we have to feel just the passion and the readiness of this team early. We can't wait till the second quarter, the third or fourth possession. I'm looking for energy. I'm looking for efficiency on offense. I'm looking for points early. We have to start fast.
And it's such a good point you make, because you think about some of the Cougs' big wins, good wins on the year, right? Colorado State, they jump out to an early lead in the first half, and then they are able to ride the defense home. You talk about San Diego State, same thing, right? Big second quarter, then they score right out of half, and they jump on them, and that game's pretty much over. And so they have shown, and Jimmy Rogers talked about it this week, they're not finishers. They've really struggled in the second half coming out of halftime, particularly in the fourth quarter. So to your point, Cougs kind of need to get some points on the board early. They did the same against Toledo, right? Like, can they get out to a fast start, particularly offensively? For me, Bump, this boils down to the turnover battle. And look, that's coach speak, and every game boils down to the turnover battle. But Washington State has been so bad in turnover margin, -10 on the year. The defense hasn't forced a ton of turnovers. They forced some 4-and-outs, so I want to be clear on that fourth down stops do not get counted as turnovers, and Washington State has had those. So that's probably not a fair number. That being said, the offense has turned the ball over way too much, and the defense has not had multi-turnover games, right? And I think if Washington State defensively can force 2 or more turnovers, Cougars are going to walk away with this game. I absolutely think that, because the defense is playing great. Offense just needs a couple extra possessions, some short fields to get the juice going. But you cannot let, like you said, Louisiana Tech hang around. I mentioned how they're +6 in the turnover margin with 7 defensive touchdowns. So if they get turnovers, they know what to do with the football. Cougs got to protect the football. They got to turn it over.
Hey, win the battle in the trenches, man. I'm looking at this film, B, and our offensive line and defensive line can win this battle in the trenches. It always starts with the bigs, even though we might get all the love on the outside. So, bigs, I'm looking at you. You're getting healthy. You're making some plays. Let's keep the good times rolling.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Alex Brink. You can find me on X at AlexBrink10. I am back to work this week on the radio broadcast with Chris King and Jessamine McIntyre in Pullman for the game against Louisiana Tech.
Yeah, B, get back to work. I'm tired of seeing your golfing videos and stuff, man. I'm Michael Bumpus. You can find me Saturday. I'll be covering the Wazoo game at the CW Studios. Also, Monday through Friday, Bump and Stacy show 10 to 2. And then Sunday, I'll be working for the Seahawks who are taking on the Rams. This has been Talking Cougars. We appreciate y'all.